is the Revisionary Podcast with your host, Juan Carlos. The Revisionary Podcast.
Welcome to the Revisionary Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Juan Carlos. So if you've never listened to this podcast before, the way it works is I bring on a guest and they tell us a quick story about their lives, a nonfiction story. And then after they told us the story, I give them an opportunity to retell the same story. And they get to change any facts about the story that they'd like. Today, my guest is actually Olympia Atkinson, who has kind of done it all. She's an artist, a writer, a dancer, and a comedian. And to top it all off, she's actually a veteran of the U.S. military. So I want to thank Olympia for her service, and I want to thank all of you veterans who are listening for all that you do to fight for our freedoms. I truly appreciate it. If it wasn't for the sacrifices that you guys were willing to make, then I wouldn't be able to sit here and create a podcast. So thank you for giving me an opportunity, and thank you for defending our country, and thank you for all that you do day in and day out. Also, thank you to all the military families out there, because your sacrifices aren't lost on me either. I know it's not easy being there as a support system and having to move around so that, you know, your spouse or your partner, or whoever it is that's defending our country, can go ahead and do what they do with a clear mind. So thank you for all that you do to all the military families, and thank you to all you service members, and thank you to all you veterans out there. I really appreciate every single last one of you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and see if we can get Olympia on the line. Hi, Olympia. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for coming on the Revisionary Podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So what have you been up to?
Well, I'm working on a documentary about my life story, and it's about a year out. So it's in progress, but it's coming.
Oh, wow. So wait, you have like multiple camera angles, and how'd you get involved? How'd that idea come about?
Well, I was talking to my mother about everything that I've done in my life so far. And I just turned 40.
Congratulations.
Thank you. On August 8th. So I'm still celebrating, and I'm just thankful to be here.
That's an impressive feat. I hope I can someday reach 40. The way things are going. Why don't we go ahead and jump right into it? I'm going to give the stage to you, and go ahead and tell us your story.
Okay. In high school, I was the popular girl. I played basketball. I ran track. I was prom queen. I made homecoming court. I had a really awesome experience in high school. And I am the oldest of 3 siblings. There's Carly, my sister, Bobby, my brother. And I knew early on that I wanted to be successful. I just didn't know what I would do in my life. And so after high school, I enlisted in the military, and I was thinking about what job I wanted to do. And I took the ASVAB test, and I did well on it. And they put me in a supply specialist MOS.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just for those who are listening who may not know what the ASVAB is, could you explain what that is a little bit?
Sure. It's the military entrance exam.
Okay, and it determines your job?
Yes.
Okay. And is that what MOS is? Does that stand for job?
Yes, military occupational specialty.
Got it. Okay, I understand.
And so I became a supply specialist, and I had a recruiter come to my house and meet my parents and met my family. And I was scheduled for basic training and advanced individual training. Right after I graduated that May in 1998, I caught a plane and I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Helena, Arkansas.
So was that a big difference for you?
Leaving to go to Fort Jackson?
Yes.
Yes. It was my first time flying on a plane.
Wow.
When we first arrived at basic training, I remember the drill sergeants yelling at us to the top of their lungs, get off the bus, hurry up, move it. It was scary.
Is it kind of like the movies?
It's exactly like the movies.
There's a guy with the funny hat, like just okay, I see.
Standing over you, yelling, yes. And here you are, this young person who has just finished high school. You don't know what to expect. It was a really awesome experience. I remember waking up every morning. I had to make my bunk, and I had to make it according to military standards. I would get dressed, and I had to go straight to physical training every morning.
Was that whole quarter thing, is that a real thing that actually happens? They come and bounce the quarter off your bed?
Yes.
Oh
It's true. I would do exercise. That's what physical training is. I would do exercise with my my group and my drill sergeant, and then it was off to training all day. And training consisted of learning about how to use your weapon, learning how to put on a gas mask, learning about the different abbreviations for the military, because there's a different code for the military.
Right.
Have you heard of HUA?
No, what's that?
Well, it's like something that comrades share amongst each other, and it means let's go. We're in this together.
So was basic training the first time you had ever shot a gun?
Yes.
What was that like? Were you afraid the first time?
I wasn't afraid. My dad, when I was growing up, bought my brother a BB gun when we were young. And I remember going out and watching them shoot the BB gun. And they let me and my sister shoot the BB gun too.
Okay. So
So
you
I was
kinda knew what you were
okay.
doing.
So I was okay with it.
How many targets did you hit during your exam in basic?
I hit 38 out of 40.
See, I know you're proud of that because you remember all years later.
I do, and there's more to this story.
Oh.
I actually went to the gun range in
Right.
basic training, and my drill sergeant had told the squad that whoever shot the most targets that day would earn his marksman badge.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted that badge. So I went out and I was so confident, and I shot, and I earned the drill sergeant's badge that day.
Wow, that's impressive.
Then I met some really awesome people, and I'm sure you hear this a lot about military individuals, that they make the best friends and they're lifelong friends. I also went from basic training, which lasted 10 weeks. I went to Fort Lee, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I did the military occupational specialty training. It was about 8 weeks.
So let me ask you this question. You said your MOS was in supplies, correct?
Yes.
Are you allowed to tell us exactly what that entails?
I can tell you what we do.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So we issue supplies such as uniforms for the soldiers, weapons for the soldiers, gas masks for the soldiers. Anything they need supply-wise, we order it and we issue it to the soldiers and to the unit. And we also keep all of the equipment inventoried and managed at the supply room.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's a really cool job. I would recommend it if someone was interested in joining the military. So At Fort Lee, I went to classes all day, and I learned about what my job consisted of, and I did more physical training. I was in the best shape of my life in Fort Lee. I remember running 6 miles in the morning.
Wow.
I remember my drill sergeant at Fort Lee told me that I would be a sergeant major one day.
And
She
is
she
that
had so much faith in me.
is that like the highest role you can reach as an
It's
enlisted?
the highest rank on the enlisted side,
Got it.
because there are two sides. There's the officer side, and then there's the enlisted side.
So is that a E10? I'm guessing. I don't know.
I believe it's E9.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I really wouldn't know. Okay, so that's high praise.
After Fort Lee, after advanced individual training, I came back to Little Rock, and I was in a unit, an aviation unit with the Army National Guard for 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was great. I worked with some really interesting people. I was able to obtain the rank of supply sergeant E5.
Uh-huh.
I even went to training for E6 to be promoted to E6, but I got out of the military in 2009.
Right. I mean, seems like solid timing. I mean, you at that point you had a good career.
I did. I did, but I got married after I came back. I went to I went to Fort Hood, Texas
Mm-hmm.
in 2000, and I was a supply specialist for a signal company. And that's where I met my husband, Steve, and I had my first child, Jordan.
Was your husband also in the military?
He was.
Okay. Wow.
And unfortunately, Steve and I got divorced, and I was in Fort Hood. I went to Korea for a year on active duty.
What was that like living in Korea?
It was so much fun. It was learning a new culture.
Right.
We worked with Korean soldiers.
What was something interesting that you learned? Because you mentioned culture. Like, what was like a big cultural shock for you when you got there?
The food.
Oh. Explain. What do you mean?
Well, there was this one food that we tried whenever we would leave post. It was called yakimandu,
Okay.
and it tasted like dumplings,
Uh-huh.
but it was fabulous. And what was so cool is there was a McDonald's in Korea,
Right.
and we were missing American food. So we were always at McDonald's.
You mean to tell me y'all wanted to see the world and ate cheeseburgers and french fries?
Yes.
Oh, no.
I would shop a lot in Korea. The prices were really low. You could buy a blanket for a mink blanket for $25.
Okay. Sounds fancy.
Oh, it was fancy. I bought several for my sister, my brother, and my mom.
Right.
And I mailed them back to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed in Korea for a year. I made some more awesome friends, and I'm still friends with the people from Korea today.
As a soldier, like, what was your experience in Korea? Because I've heard from people who weren't soldiers that lived in Korea that sometimes they saw that my friend was telling me that they put up curfews for the soldiers. Is that true?
It is true. We were an hour away from the demilitarized zone
Right.
where North Korea is. And so sometimes they would be afraid that there would be an attack from North Korea and they would shut down the post. And we had a curfew to be in our barracks.
Really? Did that make you nervous?
It did. I was listening carefully to whatever the briefing was that day.
Wow. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything.
No, and I was going to ask you. So you mentioned the food. You mentioned the curfews, and I'm sorry to fixate that. I just think it's fascinating that you had an opportunity to live in Korea. Did you get a chance to explore? Like, was there an art scene? What was that? Because I've heard that Korea is like Seoul in particular. I don't know how close you were. Is a mega city on par, maybe even bigger than New York City.
I went to Seoul a lot, and it was a big city, but we only went so far. It wasn't blocked off to Americans or anything like that, but we just had certain places that we went in Seoul. And I remember there was this big hotel on Seoul's Post. And everyone liked to go there because they had dining and shopping. And I think it was called the Dragon.
Okay.
So after I left Korea, I came back to Little Rock, and like I said, I was divorced and I had custody of my son, Jordan, and I was a single mom, and I worked for a telemarketing company for a couple of years, and I decided that I was going to go back to college.
Okay.
And so I enrolled at the University of Central Arkansas, that's located in Conway, Arkansas.
Is that the one that yells "Pig Suey" at all their football games?
No, that's the University of Arkansas.
Got it. I'm sorry. That's all I know about Arkansas. Is "Pig Suey."
Yes.
Got it.
Everyone knows about the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yes. Okay.
So we were the Bears at UCA, at the University of Central Arkansas. So I was at the college. I was really engaged in learning about various subjects. My major was communication and my minor was sociology. And so I graduated college, got my bachelor's in speech communication in 2008. And I had gotten remarried.
Okay.
And I had another child. So I had 2 kids. I was married to Jeremy.
This and 4 years out of the military,
right? In 2008,
yeah,
I was still in the military and about to get out.
Okay. I understand.
And I had my daughter Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So things were great. Life was great. I had to decide what I was going to do with my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, I'll be a teacher because both of my parents are teachers.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I can see you being a teacher. Like, I get teacher vibes from you.
Really?
Yeah. Just real friendly, really willing to help. I get those vibes from you.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. And so I started working for a pre-kindergarten program called DREAM in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
right after I got out of the military. I was enjoying myself, but I was learning a lot about the craft of teaching.
Right.
I said, okay, I'm around 3 and 4 year olds. I'm learning about the way they like to play, the way they interact with one another. Maybe I'll write a children's book.
Makes sense.
And so I wrote Kendall's plans and published it in 2010. I did a book signing and I went to schools in Little Rock and talked about the characters in the book and the process of publishing a book. And I sold copies on a website and I sold copies at a bookstore, through bookstores. So it was great.
So what was the process of doing book signings? Like, were you getting mobbed by parents asking for autographs?
I actually set up a kiddie table.
Okay.
And I signed the book where the kids sat down and I signed the book with them. I didn't really connect with the parents.
That makes sense. Okay.
I went from pre-K to middle school, and I taught middle school science 1 year.
Right.
And I really preferred pre-K.
Why? Is it because they're not as sassy?
Well, they were less hormonal.
I understand.
Middle school kids have attitude. They have emotions that are out of control. It was a challenge.
I mean, I'd imagine. I remember being 13 and thinking life was so hard, so I get it.
And so I decided to go to graduate school, and I ended up going to Henderson State University in Arkadelphia, Arkansas.
Arkadelphia?
Yes.
Okay. It sounds like they were like, we need a name for a city. Philadelphia's already taken. Arkadelphia will do.
Well, I really had a great time in grad school, learning more about the strategies and the principles of teaching. I was striving for a master's degree in education, and that's when I got divorced the second time.
Okay.
So it interrupted my graduate school experience.
Now, was it the stress of originally the military and then grad school in your career that added to, that led to those divorces?
Well, my first divorce, it really revolved around being separated from one another because I was in Korea
Right.
alone. I couldn't take my husband and my son.
I get it. Yeah, so the military did put the stress. Okay, got it. That's what I was wondering.
And then the second marriage, it was just, we weren't compatible. We made a mistake.
Look, it happens. I get it.
Yeah. And so I wanted to start my own business. And so in 2014, I opened Atkinson's Dance Academy.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Thank you. And I went to after school programs to teach dance. I taught hip hop and jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And I had about 300 40 kids that I would see every week in various after school programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of work on my shoulders. And it was about the same time that I started the business, I was interested in comedy. And that's when I started doing open mics in Little Rock and in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
So when you decided to go on stage, what were you, I guess, what is your main focus? Like, what was your driver on stage?
I liked talking about political topics and music.
Okay. So that's where your voice is. Let me, if you don't mind, I'd like to backtrack a little bit on your story. Is
Okay.
Sure. When you were in the military, you mentioned a few places you went domestically. You mentioned going to Korea. Is there any other places that you got to go internationally?
No, Korea was the only deployment.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So I was interviewed. I was interviewed for a magazine called Idol Class. I had students who were graduating and going to college who were dancers at the studio. It was going well. And then the funding ended for several of the schools, and I had to close down.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was great while it lasted.
I'm going to stop you again here for a second.
Mhm.
What exactly is it that you would have changed in your story?
I was offered the opportunity to go to Bosnia in Southeast Europe right before I went to college. Well, it was after AIT.
So what would you have done in Bosnia?
I would have been a air traffic controller.
Oh, wow. So like you would have literally been landing planes.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And I think it would have given me a better financial start because I could have just saved money in Bosnia as a single person. So I would have changed that aspect of my life. And I don't know how it all would have what would have occurred after that.
Just so I might have missed this. What was so why did you go to college as opposed to Bosnia?
Well, I had always wanted to go to college.
Right.
I remember growing up, my mom took me to do a visit at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia.
Right.
And I knew that I wanted to have a quality education.
Got it. So okay, and so that was the reason for not going to Bosnia. Okay, I understand. And you mentioned how you would have saved money or had a better financial start if you had gone to Bosnia. But how would that have affected you today?
As I was saying, I don't know what would have occurred. I may not have gotten married.
Okay.
I may not have had my son Jordan.
Right.
And today Jordan is a freshman in college at my alma mater, the University of Central Arkansas.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm so proud of him. He's an amazing kid. And my daughter, she's an A student in the town that we live in now, Maumelle, Arkansas.
Okay, hold on. I dated someone from Arkansas, so if I remember correctly, Maumelle is right outside of Little Rock, and it's a really nice suburb.
It is.
See, I knew there was sometimes that listening to her stories would come in handy. Well, on that note, I want to say I wanted to thank you for your time and coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners before I let you go?
I'm on Instagram, I am Olympia. Follow me. I'm on Twitter, I am Olympia. And on Facebook, Olympia J. Atkinson.
Okay, and I like to end every podcast by asking a simple question. What is a memory from your childhood that brings a smile to your face, or like, it's just a fond memory that you have that always makes you feel good when you think about it? Just a quick story.
Well, my mom took my sister, my brother, and I to Six Flags in Atlanta, Georgia. And she wanted us to make a dance video. And I choreographed a dance routine for my sister and my brother. My sister did not do any of the dances that I suggested.
Mm-hmm.
She did her own thing in the video. My brother, he froze up and rocked side to side.
Uh-huh.
And I messed up the video because I was trying to talk them through the dance routine, and I was fussing the whole time. And I just think it was the most adorable childhood memory.
Yeah. No, that's a great, great story. Well, on that note, I want to thank you again for coming on the Revisionary podcast. You have been wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Later.
Bye.
The Revisionary Podcast.
I think it's incredible how one person can accomplish so much in their lifetime. And quite honestly, she really has done it all. And no matter how hard things got, she was somehow always able to figure it out. So I absolutely have a lot of respect for Olympia and everything she's overcome. With that being said, as you know, on this podcast, we have a tradition of trying to find organizations or charities to support. So for this episode, Olympia is actually very, very passionate about the Wounded Warriors Project, which I feel like almost needs no explanation. It helps our veterans and supplies services for them. So if you could go ahead and support them, as always, I'm going to put the link in the description. Thank you again for listening to the Revisionary Podcast.
This is